Hello and welcome. The central government has ushered in the Diwali New Year by cutting the excise duty on petrol and diesel by 5 and 10 rupees respectively. While this may provide a much-needed relief for the common man, what will the hit be for government's coffers? On the macro front, things are looking up, with India's PMI data rising in October. In addition, we've seen the second highest ever GST collection since the implementation of the goods and services tax. To discuss all of this and more and the state of the economy, joining us today is the Revenue Secretary, Mr. Tarun Bajaj. Mr. Bajaj, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by talking to you about that cut in excise duty. Much awaited, finally came through just ahead of Diwali. I know that the decision as far as the timing of the cut was concerned was a political one, but the quantum, that must have been taken on account of considerations of expenditure as well as revenue. Can you explain to us what the arithmetic is going to be on account of the excise duty reduction and whether that will result in any need for any additional borrowing by the government?
The excise duty cut of 5 rupees on petrol and 10 rupees on diesel by the government of India, this would have a burden or sacrifice of close to about 60,000 crores in the 5 months from November to March next year. As far as the arithmetic is concerned, we are having a good revenue growth this year, while the expenditure has also grown in some areas, as you would know, and the Finance Secretary has actually mentioned that in the media earlier. Let us see how things pan out from here. We are hopeful that we should be close to the fiscal deficit target that we have already mentioned. And I'm sure with some efforts going on the revenue front, we should be able to cover that up. And unless there is something else that surprises us in the coming 5 months, I think we should be fine.
Okay, so you're betting on the fact that revenue collections have been strong and in fact are expected to exceed the target that you had set out as far as the budget is concerned of 15.45 lakh crore rupees. Let me ask you about whether at this point in time, given the expenditure considerations, you feel that there could be any change as far as the market borrowing is concerned. The expectation and the assumption is that the government will stick to its borrowing calendar. Is that a fair assumption?
To be very frank with you, this is something that my colleague here looks after, so the exact arithmetic he would know. But I can say that as of now, there is no such plan of increasing the borrowing immediately. And let's see how does the December advance taxes come up, how do the GST figures come up in this month and the next month. My own assumption is that we may not need to go in for any additional borrowing. But as I said, that depending on what kind of expenditure and what kind of revenue figures we get in the coming months, that will actually decide. And 5 months is a long period in a government's finances. Things change dramatically with one decision. So at this point of time, I would only say that there is nothing of extra borrowing that is planned at the moment.
Okay, no extra borrowing planned as of now. That is what you're working with. And of course, it is a dynamic situation. But let me ask you, sir, because we are seeing crude prices continue to move higher. Is there room, if at all, for any further reduction as far as excise is concerned? Of course, states have also moved as far as state VAT is concerned. But if crude prices continue to rise from the levels that they currently are, do you believe that there is room, cushion for the government to be able to do more, if necessary, on excise?
I would say that is quite a hypothetical question at the present moment. We have reduced our excise duty on diesel by 10 rupees and petrol by 5 rupees. So that has had an impact on VAT, whether the states have reduced VAT or not. In spite of that, there would be an impact on VAT because VAT is also levied on excise duty. So the prices have come down and many states have actually reduced the VAT rates. So the prices have come down substantially. And I did not check up today or yesterday, but 2 days ago, immediately after we reduced the excise duty rates, the crude prices were almost the same, or they were $1 or $1.50 less than what they were on the day we reduced the prices. So let us see. Yes, I agree, the situation is dynamic. The feeling that we have from the Ministry of Petroleum is that the rates should remain somewhat at this level before they actually come down in the coming months, maybe February after the winters are over. So I don't anticipate anything like that to happen.
Okay, let's talk about revenue, sir. And I know that there'll be many interlinked questions linked to expenditure, but let's talk about revenue. You talked about GST collections coming in at the second highest number that we've seen since the rollout of the goods and services tax in 2017. How would you account for this number, sir? How much of this is on account of better compliance, the changes that have happened as far as input tax credit is concerned? How much of this is on account of the recovery that we are seeing in the economy? And is this number now going to be the run rate from here on?
Thanks for asking that question. I haven't done the modeling to see what has contributed how much to the tax revenues on the GST front, but I can say all the factors are very important. One, it definitely signifies that the economy is on the uptick, and because of that only there are more sales, people are coming out to buy things, and we are having a robust revenue. It also signifies that people have actually realized that it is very important to formalize their businesses, and more number of people are actually now coming into the GST fold and are paying taxes. So that has also been a very important factor. But a lot of importance or a lot of credit also goes to the department, which has very quietly worked on ensuring that there is a better compliance by the people. We have a lot of data. We are using artificial intelligence. We have got a large number of people who were trying to push input tax credit while there was none, which was due in that sense. So all these factors have had an impact. And I think from now onwards, I won't say that 1.30 will be the ballpark figure for every month, but yes, that I say because Indians, we Indians actually have a very different spending. This thing, we spend more during the festival season, then we spend more during the Navaratras, we don't spend during a certain period of time. Then if there is a shortage of semiconductors, the cars don't get sold. So all those factors, but I would say that from now onwards, we should not see anything less than 115, 120 in any month. So that's a good sign for GST in the coming months.
So that's an important headline that you're giving us. You're saying that you expect the run rate on the GST front to be at least between 115 and 120, if not 130, which is what we've seen coming in this month. But Mr. Bajaj, what does this then mean as far as the government's tax collections are concerned? You know, I'm just looking at some of the reports that are making calculations. So I want you to comment on those. Total tax collections are likely to exceed the FY22B amount by 1.2 trillion rupees, even with the excise duty reductions having come in. This is just one of the reports that's been put out by Yes Bank. There are many others. Do you concur with that math?
You know, I'm actually only looking at the figures that are being put up by various commentators on our revenues. I have yet not started counting my chickens. I'll wait for a little more while. For example, December advance taxes are very important for me. The December or January GST is very important for me because those are the leaner months as compared to the months that have gone by. But yes, I would concede this fact that in spite of the duty cuts, not only the excise duty cuts, we've also cut duties on edible oils, and there has been some other reliefs also. That is also going to cost us close to about 20,000 crores in the coming 5 months. So in spite of all this, both on the direct and indirect taxes, I expect that the B figures would definitely be exceeded. Let us see by how much. So it's too early for me to make a comment on that. But yes, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to overachieve our budgeted estimate targets, both on direct taxes and indirect taxes.
Well, you won't give me an estimate of how much better you believe that you're going to be able to do. But let me then ask you about what the demands are on the expenditure side. And of course, you are going to have to factor that in between your department as well as, the expenditure side, sir. We've already seen, as far as the NREGS is concerned, the expectation is that there will have to be a significant additional spending requirement. States like Tamil Nadu have written to the Prime Minister saying they've already sitting with a liability, unpaid liability of over 1,000 crore rupees. What could be the additional spending requirement for things like NREGS for the food subsidy program as well?
To be very frank with you, I'll not be able to give you the exact figure on this thing. The Finance Secretary, who's also the Expenditure Secretary, is doing his meetings, and I'm sure he has the exact figure. But yes, I concede this point that there'll be more requirement under MG Narega. There would be more requirement for food subsidy, for fertilizer subsidy. There would be also more requirement for the MEIS areas that we have decided to liquidate. And Air India, which is going to be handed over to the private player this time, would also involve some extra expenditure on the part of the government, because a lot of liability will come onto the government's balance sheet, and some of that liability will actually have to be paid. So I think if you count all that, the figures should not be less than 2 lakh crores or thereabouts, but the expenditure side would know it better. Yes, so that is what the expenditure is much larger than what was anticipated in the budgeted estimates. So I think the revenue figures that are going up should actually try and balance that extra expenditure out.
Right, on that note, we'll take a break, but we continue our conversation with the Revenue Secretary Tarun Bajaj right after this. Welcome back. You're watching State of the Economy. We're in conversation with the Revenue Secretary Tarun Bajaj. Let me then ask you about what the road ahead looks like as far as GST is concerned, sir. In the previous meeting, there wasn't any significant rate decision. Are we expecting now any further movement on a special session being called to address the compensation issue, because states have requested or asked, demanded that the compensation continue beyond July of 2022? Is that on the cards? Is that a consideration at this point in time? And can we expect anything material as far as the GST rate slabs are concerned?
We did a few tinkering in the last GST Council meeting, for example, textiles, footwear, then copper ores. Some items we did tinker, but the effect of that would be visible maybe in this month or the next month only, because it's got a lag of a month before the actual benefits accrue to us. On the extension of the compensation, we have already explained in the last GST Council meeting and also addressed the media on that the borrowings that we have done, the repayment of those borrowings and the areas that are yet to be paid on account of GST compensation cess, that itself will ensure that the GST compensation, that the cess continues till at least March of 2026. So March of 2026, whatever cess we are collecting is actually going to pay up for these loans and the areas that we have on account of GST compensation cess up to June 22. So this is something that was pointed out in the GST Council meeting in the last meeting. So a committee has been set up under the Karnataka Chief Minister's chairmanship, which is going through as to what are the various other steps that can be taken to augment the GST revenues. So let us see, we'll await that report. And once that report comes, it will be addressed in the next GST Council meeting, which should be held in this quarter, because we are supposed to hold a GST meeting every quarter. So this quarter may be in December when we hold it. So we'll be able to take a decision on some of the items that come up.
Right. So the expectation is that measures on augmenting revenue, the recommendations of that committee will be taken up in the next meeting of the GST Council. Let me ask you about some of the other pending issues which require the attention of the Finance Ministry. And I know they may not specifically fall under your purview, but I'm sure that conversations are on between various departments. On the cryptocurrency bills, the expectation is that it will be moved in this session of Parliament. The expectation also is that in comparison to the previous draft that had suggested a complete outright ban, that there could be some liberalization, there could be some room for cryptocurrencies to be allowed. In what form, whether an asset class, etc., we don't know, but the expectation is that it will not be an outright ban. Can you update us on where things currently stand on that front?
Shereen, I'll disappoint you on this question. To be very frank and very frankly speaking, I'm actually not aware of what the latest developments in Department of Economic Affairs are with respect to cryptocurrencies. So they'll be the better persons to answer that. But I'm sure whatever is coming up in the media and whatever is being discussed all over the place is being taken into consideration by them. And once they come up with the bill, they'll have all those concerns addressed there. The regulators have a view. The market has a view. The players who are actually involved in it have a view. The public is actually getting into it.
But revenue must have a view as well, sir. Revenue must have a view as well on taxing gains on account of cryptos.
Revenues, I'll tell you what my view on that is. Irrespective of whether it is regulated or unregulated, whether it is legit or illegit, though it is not in that sense, we want our tax revenues. So it doesn't matter if you make profits, if you make money out of a particular deal, we would like to have our taxes. So we will be working on that concept to ensure that if people are making money through this particular cryptocurrency system, then they should pay taxes. So that is the short point which revenue has at the present moment. But on the other things which you are very keen to ask, and the public and your viewers are very keen to get an answer to, I think the Department of Economic Affairs is the right place.
Well, we've been trying the Department of Economic Affairs with not much success, sir, so I thought I'll try my luck with you. But let me ask you, as far as disinvestment is concerned, as well as asset monetization, because I'm sure that you're getting updated on both those parameters. We've, of course, seen the Air India transaction go through. The closure of that deal will take place in December. But do you feel confident of being able to get close to the disinvestment target that's been set out in the budget?
There are two assets that are very important in this disinvestment target. One is the BPCL and other is the LIC IPO. From what I gather from DIPAM is that they are working very hard to ensure that both of them are achieved before the close of the financial year. So if these two go through, I think we should easily hit the figure that we have estimated or we have put in our budget estimates. So I'm pretty hopeful that DIPAM, after having seen the success in Air India, which we should all admit was a very difficult transaction, and they have actually been able to make it go through. I'm sure that BPCL and LIC would also go through before the end of March, and we should be able to achieve the targets that we have set for ourselves.
If that were not to happen, sir, because these are also complicated transactions, and of course, LIC, the process is underway. Even as far as BPCL is concerned, the DIPAM secretary did tell us that due diligence is underway. But if there were to be some sort of a hiccup, at least as far as BPCL was concerned, where do you believe you're going to be able to find the cushion to offset the shortfall on the disinvestment side?
So this is what answers your first question, where you were asking me about the revenues and the expenditure. So all these are imponderables. At this point of time, we are going with the assumptions that we'll have these two transactions going through. If we are not able to do it for some reason, we'll see how it goes. And by that time, we'll also have a better idea of the revenue figures, whether revenue can actually take care of all the expenditure that is happening. Or as we see it everywhere, every year, that whatever the departments actually take as the expenditure that they'll make, ultimately, if there's a saving of 10, 20, 25,000 crores on that, that would also be a cushion that would be available to us. But I think these matters of detail can only be addressed around the last quarter of the year, when actually the things become better and we'll have a better idea of how things are moving.
Right. Let me ask you about two tax-related issues. So one, of course, is the decision taken by the G20. India is signatory to that. What is our position now as far as the equalization levy, the digital tax is concerned? Are we likely to let that continue till the time runs out, till the deadline runs out? What is our position on that front?
Look, the agreement, the way it is proceeding is that we should have that in place in 23. So once we have the new framework in place, obviously the older taxes will have to go. Till such time, we should be able to recover our dues in the manner that we are doing. Having said that, I should also comment that the taxes that we are getting from this particular equalization levy is not so huge that it will make a huge difference if we do it or if we don't do it. So the total money that we get in the two taxes, one is that 2% of equalization levy and the 6% of taxes on the advertisements, the total would be coming to about not around 2,000 odd crores or maybe less in a particular year. So in a revenue of almost 11, or maybe this year will be much more, that's a very small figure. So, but the whole idea is that we wanted to have this base setup where digital companies are also liable to pay taxes in market economies. So that we have succeeded. So that's a big success. So in the years to come after 23, maybe 5-7 years down the lane, this will be a major revenue source for us. This is what our estimate is.
Right. I also wanted an update as far as the retro tax cases are concerned. So where do things currently stand on that front, whether it is with Vodafone, Kane, etc., because we haven't really heard much on whether those matters have now been settled, sorted.
You know, there's a process. Let me also explain to you how the process worked. I'll just take a minute. So after the legislation, we had to have the rules in place. So the rules came up a little while ago, and the rules have prescribed time limits for each of the steps to be taken. So there are 4 steps before the refunds can be given. 2 of the companies have already submitted their Form 1, as we call it, Form 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they have submitted Form 1. As you would know, it has already appeared in the newspapers. Kane is one amongst those 2. The remaining 7 or 8, maybe 8, are yet to come. But we are hopeful that in this next 7 days, we should have 6 to 7 submitting their forms. They've already submitted their draft forms for us to check whether there is any shortcoming in that. And Vodafone still has a little time because that came up in a different, it came up through the Finance Act. So we amended the Finance Act a little later. So Vodafone still has times till the end of the month, perhaps. So we are hopeful that all of them would actually come on board. And Kane was the elephant in the game. So that has already come, and we are hopeful of resolving all these cases before the end of the financial year.
Before the end of the financial year. And what would the outgo be, sir? It's not, again, it's not a lot like the equalization levy, but what is the quantum that will be refunded within this financial year, the expectation?
The total would be about 8,100 odd crores, with the maximum going to Kane about 7,800 or 7,900 going to Kane itself. The remaining basically are litigation or issues that would be closed.
Mr. Bajaj, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Many thanks for your time and for giving us a sense of where things currently stand on a whole raft of issues.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much indeed. We'll take a break here on the state of the economy. Don't go anywhere. We're back with more on the markets right after this.